Welcome to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. The Bitcoin barbarians are at the gate, nipping at the feet of the command and control dollar reservists, taunting the bread and circus pushing political clown tyrants, mocking the corrupt regulators and party officials who hate any payment system, which they can't chop up like a line of coke, like a credit card, and despise any currency through which they can't snort that line of coke. Yes, the Bitcoin barbarians are here, and the barbarous relic-loving hordes are letting them through the gates because all agree that Caesar, or whoever is Obama, is a freaking schmuck. Stacy?
Yes, the empire is crumbling and is lashing out, and people are sick of it. People are sick of being taxed to death. They're sick of being spied on. They're sick of being stolen from by Caesar, who's desperate and hungry and angry that he's losing his power. He's an old man, and he's lashing out at everybody. And Bitcoin is rising dramatically as people find a way to live outside of that system. But we're going to start with that crumbling empire of Caesar's. Tweet from James McIntosh. He says, CIA is building database from Western Union and others on money transfers all over the world. No privacy left.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation between the Snowden revelations and all of the ongoing machinations of the police state and the rise of Bitcoin. And as you point out, for similar reasons, back in the Roman era, you had the barbarians who did not really conquer. They were let in by the peasants who were tired of what was happening in Rome. People around the world are tired of the NSA, the CIA, the GCHQ in the UK. They're letting Bitcoin happen. They want it to happen because they want to euthanize these bankers, and they want to euthanize the system. And Bitcoin is the euthanizing agent.
And ironically, you know, as we've covered before, the NSA is doing the spying mostly for corporate espionage. And you can see this because every new revelation, it's always either they're spying on some major corporation or some major leader. You never catch them spying on Osama bin Laden or his family or some other fake, terrorist. So let's look at the consequences of this. NSA spying crushes U.S. tech companies in emerging markets. Quote, an industry phenomenon, says Cisco's Chambers. So this is Wolf Richter, and he's looking at some of these statements about the dramatic declines from like the likes of IBM and now Cisco in the emerging world, and they are terrified to use the word NSA. So Cisco CEO John Chambers had a euphemism for it during the first quarter earnings call. The, quote, challenging political dynamics in that country being China. It was in between the lines everywhere, but never once did Chambers or anyone else on his team mouth the acronym NSA.
See, the mistake that Obama and Bush and Clinton made is that they didn't give the American people a cut of the crimes that they were committing. They just they got greedy. If the American people had been benefiting in some way from the global reign of financial terrorism that Obama is involved with, and Bush was involved with, and Clinton was involved with, they might not be so happy to embrace something like Bitcoin, which gives the big FU to everybody who's at the NSA, the CIA, and all those various spy agencies. And there are equivocators who say, well, everyone is spying, or you've got nothing to fear if you've got nothing to hide. The Bitcoin community is saying, hey, you know what? We're just going to buy Bitcoin until every single banker in the world's euthanized and on the ground gasping for air. And then we're going to stamp on their throat and dance a jig on their dead corpse. That's what it's all about.
Well, let's look at Cisco's earnings again and the dramatic decline in their emerging markets, the worst being Russia for them. So our top 5 emerging markets declined 21%. Said the CEO, with Brazil down 25%, Mexico down 18%, India down 18%, China down 18%, and Russia down 30%.
Well, Cisco, very famously was the poster child of the dot-com boom and bust of the late 90s, early 2000, 2001 period. It was at one point the highest capitalized company in the world. And then, of course, their routers, which are the backbone of the internet, are infected with NSA spying. If any country in the world wants to stop spying, you need to stop doing business with Cisco immediately. And IBM, famously, is also getting crushed by revelations that they're in bed with the NSA and various spying. And it's for corporate espionage. It's for taking, you know, the U.S. never accuses China of manipulating the currency anymore. Remember, last year they used to say, oh, China's a currency manipulator. Remember Tim Geithner, before he picked up a job, working for Warburg Pincus, you know, basically committing acts of financial terrorism, but in the private sector now? So they don't talk about China being a currency manipulator anymore. It's been revealed that Cisco, IBM, Oracle, all these companies, Google, Facebook are in China leeching data from the poor peasants there and using it to their advantage to ingratiate themselves.
Well, NSA is the acronym which dare not speak its name, and he came the closest, the CEO of Cisco Chambers. He said the closest they came to was when he mentioned China. China is a little bit unique to Cisco because some of the issues going on, which you are all aware of. He said during the earnings call on August 14th, once again refusing to utter NSA.
Well, NSA has become the new N-word. Yeah. You know, on global markets around the world, if you mention the N-word, NSA, it's like a turd in the punch bowl. You know, you've really killed the buzz of that conversation. You're like, wow, NSA? Well, that gives me an uncomfortable feeling, like, ew. Yeah, that's the new N-word, buddy.
So this whole mentality of spying is also corporate espionage, but also to control those few peasants with any single pennies left in our own economies. So let's look at what's happening in France. French automaker Renault can cut off your car battery if you don't make payments on time. French automaker Renault is using its battery leasing scheme to prevent non-paying customers from charging their electric cars. Big Brother is watching, ... your battery. It's called bricking, and they lease this yeah, exactly. In order to keep the price down, they lease the battery along with their Zoe ZE electric car. But now, in the small print of your contract, it actually says it can just turn off the battery.
Right, so from remote location, the Peugeot auto manufacturing company,
Renault,
which is tied in with, of course, the state and the state spying authority. We know that the NSA is spying in France, too, and they're spying on people. They're hooked in with the credit card companies and the credit facilitators and the banks. If you miss a payment, they turn your battery off, and you're cruising down the highway, and boom! Zut alors! Je suis arrêté! Pourquoi? À cause de la crédit de banque me fluqué jusque mon flanc. C'est vrai! It's scandal! I am shocked! I am shocked! Je suis shocked!
Well, in the service contract, in the fine print, it is revealed that Renault has the right to prevent charging of the Zoe ZE at the end of the battery rental contract. It was also revealed that Renault can do this in the case of non-payment on the car or battery as well, effectively making your vehicle worthless.
Putain, Zoé! Zoé, putain! C'est vrai! C'est automobile, à ce moment, c'est blanc, c'est bouffe, c'est baf, ne marche pas. Et pourquoi? Parce que les banques sont le terrorisme. C'est vrai. Et je suis, c'est une crise existentielle. Mon foi, mon foi, mon foi. You see, that's the thing in France. If you ever have a problem, just tell somebody you have a crisis with your liver. And they'll help you. That's it. That's the only way you can get any help. J'ai une crise de foie. Stop everything! This man's got a liver crisis! Of course, you got to be careful they don't harvest your liver and serve it on a plate.
Well, as you mentioned at the top of the show, the Bitcoin barbarians are at the gate, and they are rejecting the Americans who are not willing to accept the barbarians of Bitcoin yet. The U.S. has already ceded dominance in Bitcoin trading. So currently the top 4 Bitcoin exchanges by volume are located outside of the US, with the largest being in China, and less than 2% of worldwide Bitcoin trading and real-time market making occurs within the US jurisdiction. That's because it's not illegal to trade or sell Bitcoin, but people are afraid. They're afraid of Caesar and how he will react to this challenge to his authority.
Well, Bitcoin is a Bitcoin race. It's a global Bitcoin race. Remember the space race, the late 1960s? Russia had Sputnik, which incidentally is a new show on RT. You might want to check it out with George Galloway and his wife, Gayatri. Sputnik, only on RT. But getting back to what I was saying. So Russia had the Sputnik, which went out there, beep, 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 beep. It became the space race. And then everyone in the U.S. became, oh, zut alors, we're going to lose the space race. So then John F. Kennedy, before his head got blown off, said, you know what, we're going to put a man on the moon. And then they won the space race. But now we've got a new race. It's called the Bitcoin race. And who's winning this race? Looks like Russia.
China.
China. They're winning the Bitcoin race. America's got their thumb up their string, wondering what is a Bitcoin? And the answer is it's the future. And if you don't get with it, you're going to be left cuckoo in the past.
The scary thing is how you see this sort of totalitarianism, which is a new form in that it's not like overly violent. People just comply for fear of the Caesar, of the power. Because as he points out, of course, there isn't a ban on Bitcoin in the US, but there doesn't have to be an outright ban when there is a chilling effect on banking that translates into an unwillingness for banks and credit unions to engage with Bitcoin-related companies. So it's the banks themselves, but they're also complicit in that they don't want the innovation to happen that might make them unnecessary. Given the labyrinth and ambiguity of state-by-state compliance issues, financial institutions conclude that it's far safer and easier to ignore Bitcoin-related opportunities. This is the largest single barrier to payments innovation in the U.S.
Right, because the cost of sending, let's say, $15 million from point A to point B can be as much as $100,000, whereas using Bitcoin, it might cost 6 cents. So that's a huge cut into the banking monopoly, and they have a monopoly on money transfers. The Forex market, the foreign exchange market, is a $5 trillion a day business, and not only is it manipulated by these big banks, but they charge enormous fees on top of the manipulations. So here comes Bitcoin. I can move any amount of money anywhere in the world for pennies, versus $100,000, $200,000 for the same transaction from some corrupt bank that's plugged into the NSA, that's raping me with fees, that's spying on me, that's selling me mortgage products that are concatenated from pig slop and resold on a mortgage market conducted by kleptocrats and then repackaged and securitized and fortified and remortgaged and rehypothecated and looks like something that came out of the back end of a pig over there at the No Goodnick farm. Yeah, that's what they're selling over there. Lloyd Blankfeiner's No Goodnick farm. He's got plenty of pig slop he's trying to sell. It's all going to be destroyed with the euthanizing effect of Bitcoin. Ain't going to work on Lloyd Blankfeiner pig farm no more. Yes, you are. Because all that pig is into rehypothecated security that is securitized, sold on Wall Street. Nothing but worthless junk that is somehow making everybody rich, except those who are actually doing a job. Stacey Herbert, we got to go.
Thanks, Max.
Stay tuned for the second half, a whole lot more. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to two guests. Carl Gray, a Bitcoin investor and producer of the documentary film Life on Bitcoin, and Austin Craig, who is featured in the documentary. Gentlemen, welcome to the Keiser Report.
Hi, Max. How are you? Max.
All right, Carl, we'll start with you. Before we get to the film, tell us about how you got into Bitcoin.
So I was introduced to Bitcoin about mid to late 2009. Just came across it in the wires. And at first, I have to be honest, I thought it was something similar to this World of Warcraft money that people exchange to buy elves and whatnot.
Let me just stop you right there for a second and let people know that you have accumulated a position of 100,000 Bitcoin. So it's not very far from what the Winklevoss twins have in terms of Bitcoin. So you are a major Bitcoin player, I should add, but continue.
Absolutely, but my rowing skills are nowhere near as good as theirs. So yeah, I got into it. Some of the things that really attracted me to it was it seemed to be a perfect blending of ideology. I come from kind of a libertarian, anarcho-capitalist background with speculation in finance and investment. And as I started to learn more and more about it, started to play around with it, buying a little here and there, initially, I started to look at it as a way to facilitate currency transfers. I do a lot of traveling from continent to continent, and this seemed like a very easy way and low-cost way to move money around. More and more, though, it appears to have taken on a status as an asset class in and of itself, similar to gold and silver. Although it should be said, some of the biggest Bitcoin detractors right now are gold bugs and silver bugs.
Why do you think that is, Carl? In other words, a lot of people who are so-called libertarians, so-called anarcho-capitalists, you would think they would be swarming all over Bitcoin, and yet many of them are rejecting it. It seems completely Lulu crazy to me. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they have lots of gold and they don't have lots of Bitcoin. So they're advocating the asset class that they're most bullish in and have the strongest position in. I try to advocate an approach to investing which I call non-emotive, which basically is don't get emotionally tied to your assets.
Yeah, but Carl, people say who own gold, the Rand Paul community, that it's about freedom. that it's about libertarianism. So are you saying that they are speaking more from a place of their own self-interest and their position in gold, and that the ideology that they espouse is more window dressing and not based on a true conviction?
Well, I think there could be an element of that, but I think it's more so this ideological argument about purity of money, right? What is money? That's the big question. Whenever you go onto Bitcoin forums or talk to Bitcoin people or gold bugs, the big question is, what is money? And of course, it always comes back to this argument of, well, gold is money because it has intrinsic value. You can make stuff with it. You can make jewelry, you can make space helmets, whatever the case may be. Bitcoin, they say, has no intrinsic value, so it's obviously not money. And I would obviously argue that, saying that, yes, you can't necessarily make something out of Bitcoin because it's digital, but you can do a lot of things with Bitcoin. You know, I talked about currency transfers, mobility of money, velocity of getting money from one spot to another. And you know, I don't know about you, but I don't often like to show up at the airport with a big bag of gold coins slung over my shoulder so that TSA can say, well, what's going on here? Where are you going? And what's this all about?
Look, the argument about whether or not Bitcoin has intrinsic value or not, to me, and I've said this a few times, and I'm surprised more people aren't, you know, agreeing with me on this, but essentially, what we're talking about are precious numbers. So the total Bitcoin network now, which is carrying the Bitcoin protocol, it's tens of thousands of nodes or computers or servers strong, working in parallel to discover or mine what are essentially precious numbers. So you have a precious metals, precious minerals like diamonds, rubies, and these are precious numbers. These are numbers that could not otherwise be discovered were it not for this enormous distributed computational array of computers all over the world. So it has intrinsic value. It's just that I guess that these folks just haven't really gotten the ability to change the way that they think. They're just basically lagging behind. Unfortunately, by the time the Rand Paul people get into Bitcoin, the price will be $2,000 per Bitcoin or higher. So they'll be way, way late to the party, but still, there's still tremendous upside. Let's talk to you for a second. Austin, Craig, you and your wife lived for 100 days on Bitcoin, and you traveled around the world. Tell us about it.
Okay. The idea was, if Bitcoin is this decentralized digital currency, it's not currency unless it's used for things. And that's one of the main objections that people have toward Bitcoin is, what can you use it for? What can you buy with it? Well, we wanted to see if it really was usable. So we started using it for everything. We did this experiment where for the first 100 days after our post-honeymoon married life, we used only Bitcoin. From the time we landed back from our honeymoon, that's all we used for rent, gas, groceries, everything we needed. And we tried to work that out in our hometown, finding a grocery store, finding gas stations, finding an insurance provider. And then when we'd figured out and gotten comfortable using it in our hometown, we wanted to expand the boundaries, see what was possible. And so we traveled. We went around the world. We drove across the US and then flew to Stockholm, where you mentioned the nodes that are running the Bitcoin network. Per capita, there's a higher concentration of Bitcoiners there running those nodes than anywhere else in the world. Went to Stockholm, met up with KNC Miner, who makes the hardware that runs a lot of this network. We went to Berlin. The Kreuzberg neighborhood has a lot of restaurants and other merchants that accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. And then we flew to Singapore, a global financial hub and representative of China's just become very interested in Bitcoin. And Singapore is this highly commercial area. We wanted to see what the community there thought of Bitcoin and how they were using it and getting involved. What we found is that it's being used and adopted all over the place for all kinds of different reasons. You know more than anybody that the views on Bitcoin are pretty broad, but so are the reasons that people are using it. Right now, you financed a project, or organized the financing of the project, Carl, with a crowdfunding platform, and I believe you raised $72,000 or something along those lines to get this project going, and it's a film, and there is, since the film has been made, since you've come back, Bitcoin's story has been growing exponentially. So I believe, if I'm not wrong, that the current volume per day is equaling the transactions of PayPal. It's now equal now in Bitcoin. That's a huge benchmark that's been achieved. The adoption rate for Bitcoin is now similar to the iPhone. Okay, so this is just exploding. It's one of the fastest adopted technologies in the history of technology. The iPhone being previously the most quickly adopted technology in history. This looks like it's going to eclipse the iPhone. And yet you still have even the mainstream business press, like Business Insider, Henry Blodgett's company with Joe Wiesenthal. You know, they are like
anti-Bitcoin. They wouldn't even open their minds a slight crack to think about what the implications of this are. They're just, no, no, no. Is it just because they are wed to the old way of thinking and they're about to become obliterated by Bitcoin and we'll never hear about them in 5 years? Or is it just a learning curve that they have to go through?
One of the analogies I use with Bitcoin, and especially in the libertarian movement, the whole gold Bitcoin argument, is it's like email. Right? When email came along, the precursor to that was regular mail or telegrams or phone calls, whatever the case may be. And the early adopters of email realized this is going to be the way everybody communicates in the future. And of course, from that, we derive Twitter and all of those types of communication. And so we're at that cusp now. The early adopters getting in are going to be thought of as luminaries down the road. And that's happening today. Bitcoin, as Austin mentioned, I mean, Austin and Becky live in a small little town called Provo in Utah, not the bleeding edge of either finance or adoption for new trendy ideas. It's very conservative, very Republican area, and yet they were able to buy gas, they were able to buy groceries, they were able to pay for their rent. So I mean, people are getting it. People are understanding, okay, this is simply a form of communication, a form of financial communication, if you will. And they're, after about a 5-minute conversation, we're seeing people saying, yeah, sign me up, and we'd help sign them up, and then they take payment.
Right, Austin, you were also acting almost as missionaries, because when you went to towns and they couldn't use your Bitcoin, you just signed them up, and they started using Bitcoin. And you had, I think NPR covered a story about farmers using Bitcoin, and they were introduced to Bitcoin, and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, we had to evangelize Bitcoin, and sometimes it would be, we would meet somebody and we had to do the transaction right there and then. We had to convince them in 5 minutes to accept Bitcoin as a form of payment. And we used different techniques to do that. We used different third-party tools like BitPay for somebody who's going to be a long-term merchant accepting Bitcoin on an ongoing basis. We would use Coinbase, who were paying somebody just for the first time and needed to do the transaction right there. You could just use their email address to send them Bitcoin. There are various tools and third-party services that are popping up in the Bitcoin ecosystem that make it pretty easy to teach somebody about it and then get them involved very quickly.
Was there any pockets of resistance? Did you go to a town or a geography or a culture where this message, the evangelizing of Bitcoin, met resistance?
We went to places that were not really ready for it sometimes. As we were driving across the US, one of the things that you need to have to be able to use Bitcoin is connectivity. You need to be connected to the web. And that proved to be an obstacle that we faced around the globe. Surprisingly, it was an obstacle in Berlin several times, and in neighborhoods that were already very Bitcoin friendly. If we didn't have Wi-Fi, it didn't matter how open they were to it. But those problems are being overcome more and more as connectivity grows and as the tools available to use Bitcoin grow as well.
Now in Africa, connectivity is leapfrogging ahead of a lot of other countries, and also the use of digital currencies, and Bitcoin is big in Africa. So it could be one of those seminal moments in history where technology enables a continent to suddenly become quite dominant in the world economy, and then a country like the US, which is trying to put up roadblocks, is going to really take themselves out of the game here, Carl.
Yeah, I think that's very important to understand. One of the countries that has adopted Bitcoin so readily has been China. And I think 100 years from now, historians may look back on this and say, this was the Suez Canal moment. This was the moment when power shifted from maybe the Western countries, the UK, United States, over towards the Eastern countries. Baidu, which is the Chinese ISP, have now accepted it as a method of payment. I don't think it's coincidence that all of a sudden Bitcoin jumped from the $150 range to $400 in the weeks following that. So the people in China that I speak with are immensely bullish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. And I think you're exactly right, especially regarding Africa. This decentralized currency is going to allow people who traditionally haven't had access to easy credit or to finance in the traditional sense. All of a sudden now you're going to start seeing peer-to-peer lending, microcredit, all of this facilitated by Bitcoin without the need of going to a big brick-and-mortar bank. You're going to have people in one village lending to another. That's going to basically allow for each village to become more prosperous, more self-reliant. Bono talks about let's cancel the debt. Let's help through capitalism help people bring themselves out of poverty, and I think Bitcoin is going to be central to that.
Bono. You said Bono. Yeah. Well, I think a more recent example is Russell Brand, who got a lot of traction, tens of millions of views on a video he made with Newsnight talking about we need a revolution, we need a revolution. The revolution's here, Russell. It's called Bitcoin. Now, 3 years ago, we really broke the Bitcoin story to the world press here in the KEISER report. I think that's a fair statement. A lot of people heard about it for the first time from this show. We had Tony Gallipi on from BitPay. BitPay is now world-leading merchant processor, and we've been following this all along. I want to do another first. Another KEISER report exclusive. We are going to bring to the world community now a phrase they may not have heard before, LITECOIN. LITECOIN is a cryptocurrency. You're already into LITECOIN, Carl. Go ahead, take it away.
So people would be familiar with the traditional relationship between gold and silver, silver being the little brother of gold. They tend to follow each other, sometimes in a staggered way. Litecoin has a similar relationship with Bitcoin. Right now it's trading about $4 a coin. Operates very, very similarly. It's a cryptocurrency operating just simply on a different exchange. We believe that Litecoin is going to offer the same kind of returns that we've seen in Bitcoin. We think it's just maybe 6 to 18 months behind the curve.
All right, Carl, we got to cut her off there. And Austin, I got to say goodbye. Thanks for being on the KEISER Report.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks, Max.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the KEISER Report with me, Max Keiser, and Stacey Herbert. I'd like to thank our guests, Carl Gray. He's the producer of a new film called Life on Bitcoin. And, of course, Austin Craig, who's he and his wife are traveling around the world living on nothing but Bitcoin. If you'd like to get in touch with us, tweet us at KEISER Report. Until next time, Max Keiser saying bye, y'all.